So, Leah, we're going to start with the cover of the Daily Telegraph.
So the Telegraph, they've got a picture of Sven-Göran Eriksson, who sadly passed away, aged 76, and they've also got a story about violent criminals being allowed to just say sorry, including sex offenders as well. Sex offenders and people who've committed knife crime are among thousands, 150,000 to be exact, who will have no police record. They'll just be given these things called community resolutions when they're caught, when they admit to their crime. So it's a sort of informal agreement between the police and the person involved in. I mean, the definition says a low-level offence or antisocial behaviour, but obviously these are more serious, and this could be part of the, obviously the government is running out of space in jails. I mean, it's kind of already run out of space in jails, because now they want to arrest people for, sharing memes or, saying things online or shouting at a police dog.
Facebook posts.
Or waving an England flag in the wrong country, which is England. Things like that. So, I don't know, it feels like... I mean, who was it? Alexander, the guy who wrote Gulag Archipelago, said...
Solzhenitsyn.
Yeah, I wasn't going to try that. He said, a communist government frees criminals and criminalises and jails political dissidents. So I think that's kind of what we're seeing here.
Well, yes, that is friend Nick calls it anarcho-tyranny. That's right, where you try and distinguish between people who might be a threat to the state, to the regime, and people who are just common or garden criminals.
Oh, I don't think we're trying to work out which is which anymore at all. We're just going, there's no room. There's no room for them at all. We're giving twice as many community resolutions as actual criminal charges now, and... our prisons are full, but our hearts still have space. We're accepting apologies from... say sorry to the person you stabbed and molested. Shake hands. That's all sorted.
Yeah.
I'm wondering whether we try giving them gifts, maybe. How about kisses? That might do it.
Yeah.
I suppose, to be serious, the question is just how violent are they, and are they attempted stabbings? I mean, surely somebody who's actually stabbed somebody must surely not be allowed to just...
Well, I think an attempted stabbing is a bit worrying, don't you?
Well, yes, I do. I mean,
They're probably much more violent than somebody who's shared a couple of pretty tame memes on Facebook.
Yeah.
And there doesn't seem to be any parity. And, if everybody who shared memes, from the left and from the right went to jail, then fine. If Nick Lowell's from Hope Not Hate, if he went to jail for sharing inflammatory demand, this hoax...
accusations,
It shouldn't be the offenders saying sorry. It should be the government saying sorry for not locking people up.
So the difference, they would say, is that they're trying to extinguish this fire before it catches, the idea that people can post social media, whereas I suppose violent criminals are considered to be isolated and, they're not part of a wave. They're not part... I mean, I'm not saying I agree with this, but that's the argument.
But, I mean, some of the violent criminals that have been released, like there's Lawson Natty, so he was involved in the machete killing of a 14-year-old boy, and he's been let out of jail 6 months. After serving 6 months in jail, so that people who, shared memes can go into jail for much longer. It doesn't make sense to me.
I mean, it does seem statistically the way in which jail works is it locks people up, it keeps them off the street, stops them reoffending. All the other stuff is commentary.
Keeps people safe,
Kerry, what are the Express leading with?
Farage warns of shocks to come in Labour budget. I don't know why this is particularly about Farage, because I thought quite a lot of people are warning about these shocks coming up. Which
the Express.
Almost certainly, well, of course, yes, that's why. But it's a general warning, isn't it? At the same time, Labour are saying that this isn't some horror show that's coming, but they are warning us of 10 years of pain for the UK with tax rises and so on. And they, of course, are justifying this with the black hole, which has become a mantra, this kind of vague metaphor, which is not a very good metaphor because a hole in the finances, in the fiscal arrangements. Yeah. You fill a hole, you don't fill a black hole. That would be stupid.
Well, that's the thing, a black hole can't be filled.
It's just super massive.
Yeah, and also you can't look past the event horizon, so you don't know where your money's going. So actually, maybe it's a good analogy for the Labour government.
It might be a wormhole into a better future, though.
Well, they're certainly filling it up with everything they can. There's going to be like £18 billion more spent on asylum seekers or given citizenship.
And train drivers and so on, they're paying out. It should be a nice comfort for the pensioners who can't afford to heat their homes. They think at least the train drivers are being sorted out.
Nice warm cabins as well. I do. I mean, maybe we could make pensioners train drivers. They don't have to do anything very demanding, do they? Once they're in, wheel them in.
They won't even know they're doing it.
There's your button.
The interesting thing is with his speech where he's he's kind of tying this in with as a metaphor with people who cleaned up after the riots. And this is Starmer saying, I feel pride in the people who cleaned up the streets, rebuilt walls and repaired the damage. And I thought the obvious parallels, and imagine the pride we'll feel as a nation when after the hard work clearing up the mess. And he's basically trying to take that to say that, it's like, I've seen people sweeping, so I thought some sweeping changes to the tax.
Well, it is like trying to create a really unsuitable metaphor as though we've all had some kind of riotous party for the last 14 years. The last 14 years under the Tory government, by the own accusations of Labour, have been of austerity. That was the main complaint made against them, that they were too concerned with the deficit and not sufficiently concerned with spraying money all over the place. And now they get in and go, oh, there's no money anywhere. It's like, well, I mean, it's either been a massive party. The suspicion is they're trying to use this metaphor for a black hole or, damage, we're going to have to work to repair it, in order to justify spending plans which they have, which would be deeply unpopular when people actually register what they're going to spend the money on, right?
And also, I think ratcheting up taxes isn't going to be as palatable as it used to be, because people who pay the most tax just aren't using the services. People, 20 years ago, rich people would use the NHS. Now, rich people are all moving across the private sector, and same with schools and everything else.
Well,
so, they're not going to...
Some will be moving out of the private sector for schools, I should think, in the next year, now that the VAT's come in.
Yeah, but overall, rich people aren't getting anything back from public services. They're not getting anything back from the tax they pay.
No, they're not. And they're not even allowed to stand on the beaches with shotguns. So that's disgraceful.
And it's easy for them to move as well.
Those were the days.
The cover of The Guardian, quickly, please, Leo. We have to snick through this one.
So The Guardian reveals the staggering rise in anxiety among children. I mean, maybe they're reading The Guardian. It seems to whip up enough fear. But over 200,000 young people have been referred to mental health services and basically just need to put down their smartphones and go outside. But I guess we've not left the country in a good state for young people. There's a lot of, as well as social media, which is a new thing which induces anxiety. I mean, I grew up in a sort of, culturally homogenous, safe country. It's called Scotland. But now, we've got terrorism, grooming gangs, crime, rising knife crime, especially among young people. We've got all this gender nonsense in schools, so now kids, don't even know if they're a girl or... At least, before there was this sort of Cartesian, absolute truth that you're a boy. Now you don't even have that. You've got critical race theory teaching people to hate their heritage and hate their country and hate themselves based on the colour of their skin. So it's not a good time to be young.
I mean, it's interesting. The Guardian would, of course, say that all the anxiety comes from the opposite. They would say that the anxiety comes from gender fascism, of people imposing gender rules on young people. And they would say that it was climate change, and they would say that it was race riots. Those are the things that are causing anxiety. But one way or another, certainly we do create a cloud of anxiety about it.
But we have spent decades now participation medals and telling them that they all look perfect and everyone's beautiful and so on. Nothing is making any kind of difference, is it? And we're also, whilst mental illness, of course, is something important we should discuss and should help people, but we've also sort of glamorised it to some extent, and I kind of blame the Edinburgh Festival for that, really, more than anything. And I think there's some good shows up there, but there's an awful lot of, if you haven't got some neurodiversity...
I went to see a few shows, and some were good and some were bad, but you're absolutely right, they almost all started on that premise. What's my quirk?
Let's do my What's Wrong With Me show.
I mean, it's almost like this year's must-have accessory, isn't it? In fact, it has been for a few years.
And also, none of the genuinely autistic comedians did a show about their autism.
No.
It was all these perfectly socially normalised comedians doing it.
Very quickly, Kerry, 20 seconds, if you wouldn't mind, on the Daily Star.
20 seconds. AI is going to kill us. Our last chance to stop psycho killer robots. They're forever warning us about this, and maybe that'll be true, but to hell with it. Let's see what happens, and maybe they'll be really nice. Maybe they'll solve world poverty.
Well, if it does come to an end, it'll be short and sharp, I imagine, anyway, and efficient, right? The AI apocalypse?
Yes.
Yeah, much more efficient than...
Yes, totally. They'll know what they're doing.
That's the front page. And welcome back to Headliners for the second half. We kick off with the Daily Mail, Kerry. Their take on Elon Musk, standing by Pavel Durov and Telegram, and they get a little dig in at the hairlines as well.
Liberté, 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 apparently Musk has tweeted, because he can tweet as much as he likes. And he's talking about this, the Russian counterpart, Pavel Durov, who owns Telegram, which... I've not looked at Telegram myself, but I've heard a lot about it. I noticed that people on X, on Twitter, call it a cesspit, so it's got to be pretty bad. But what we're into is really this forever war between free speech and censorship. Which those for free speech will always win over the people into censorship, because they can call them by much nastier names that they're not prepared to use themselves. So
Just to clarify, Telegram is not like Twitter. Telegram is more like WhatsApp.
It's a bit more like WhatsApp, and it's supposed to be encrypted messages, although I read a thing today saying they're not really that much encrypted, and if you cancel your account and go back in, apparently the messages come up again, so I'm not sure whether the encryption is working that well.
But the head of Telegram has been, so the Elon Musk equivalent has been arrested in France, which is, I mean, this is pretty serious intimidation of somebody. And the reason
crimes against minors they've put, but that's not him attacking minors.
No, that's not him. So they're saying his app has facilitated,
terrorism and crime and all this sort of stuff.
But all the apps, like Facebook, every telephones, like pens.
Yeah.
Pens can be used to write hate crime messages. You know what I mean?
The pens.
Post offices, our postal network was used to send letter bombs by the IRA. Like, we weren't dragging postmasters in. We should have been dragging them in for another.
And he's got like 950 million users. So I think realistically, the idea that he can kind of camp... There's a lot of talk about exactly what might be going on below the surface, what might be kind of pressure being brought to bear.
Well, they're bringing pressure on him to... They already tried to get him to install a backdoor so they can spy on what other people are saying, and Telegram refused. Previously, Russia put political pressure on Telegram, because they're based in Russia, to let them see Ukrainian messages, and Telegram refused, and they were patted on the back for that. So now, it's the West trying to get that backdoor access, and there's there's a lot of pressure on social media sites at the moment because everybody in the West, all the sort of authoritarian governments are saying, oh, there's misinformation, we need to stop misinformation, but who gets to decide what's misinformation? The same people said Hunter Biden's laptop story was misinformation. It's
Sure. And the way these things are used is just as Hamas will use Telegram, but at the same time, people under authoritarian regimes are able to use Telegram, and we're able to hear a little bit about what they have to say. So we've heard a lot from people in Lebanon talking about their fears of Hezbollah fighting even and causing a war. So some of this stuff would not be coming out if it wasn't for...
No, you're right. I mean, during the Arab Spring, social media, that was the first great use of social media, wasn't it? It was seen as being the weapon of the people. And a lot of the colour protests and colour riots and so on... destabilising regimes, the CIA used it very effectively. It's, these things can be used by everyone. Telegraph now, not Telegram, Leo, and it's not OK to be white in Birmingham by the sound of it.
Apparently not. So racist graffiti in Birmingham reading "No whites" and "No whites allowed" is being investigated by police to see if it's actually a banner above any public sector institution. Interestingly, the police officers who are investigating this will then have to attend diversity training where they'll be told that whites are bad. So it's a bit ironic. I mean, this is basically CCTV footage obtained by the Telegraph shows the moment a hooded figure approaches the first location at 1:20 a.m. in the morning and then sprays it on the wall. But this is interesting because this is critical race theory that is spread through all our institutions, and now it's manifesting itself on the streets. And even the Muslims protesting in Rochdale, they were repeating this sort of critical race theory, saying that there's systemic racism and all this sort of stuff.
Is it? Because I got the feeling it was more just like straight up racism, like just straight up no whites. We don't want whites around here. This is our turf. Is that critical race theory? Or is that just old-fashioned tribalistic sort of?
They're both old-fashioned tribalistic racism.
I mean, it could lend itself, yes, because it is a theory of psychology and the way people of different colours think, and particularly white people think in an evil way. So that probably doesn't help. At the same time, what's interesting about this is the police don't like to say what colour someone was when they offended, but this one we can be pretty sure they weren't white.
A hooded figure whose shadow spoke for itself.